Great. Oh, my bad.
Oh, you're
Thank
good
you.
now. All right, sir, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are calling together the meeting of the Government Relations Committee of the Clark County School Board. And currently, we do not have a quorum, but we do have our, so we cannot adopt the agenda, amend or adopt the agenda, and we also cannot approve with the minutes. But what we really need to do, even though we don't have a quorum, is to see what we need to do to update our legislative agenda, because this is something that, by all rights, we should have done that end of last year, and I fault myself for not seeing that, because we do need to get it passed through the board, and that would be at the March meeting, and the legislative session will probably be about 30 days in by then. But I don't feel like it's all for naught, because usually the legislation starts going fast and furious the last days of the legislative agenda, legislative session. So I do think it's important that we do that. To go ahead and look at our legislative agenda. This is actually the agenda is something, the legislative agenda is something that we began when Ovita was chair of the committee, and we've just kind of built onto it since then. And we've tried to keep it very distinct, and it's on our website. And we have, actually it's very short in terms of, there's 6 pieces to it, and each piece has one solid sentence, and then we have rationale as to why we are suggesting this. So I think, Byron, if you don't mind, if you can go ahead and just kind of update us. I do have one question for you right out of the gate. And from what the Secretary Woods said, the proposed budget that I guess he ran through the governor will reimburse the austerity cuts for 2019, 2020 to restore 60% of that. Is that right?
That's correct. I actually have the calculation. We got a big spreadsheet from the Department of Revenue, or not, excuse me, GDOE this afternoon. I don't know who's the host, but if I'm able to share my screen, I can kind of put those front and center so we can look at that.
You can share it, Byron.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so I summarized it. This was our initial allotment for the current fiscal year that we're in, for FY21. And so what the governor just passed is the FY21 amended budget. And in that, they're refunding, like you said, Mr. Davis, about 60% of what was originally held back in austerity measures. So if you look at this one line item right here, we were originally, the state originally withheld about $7.3 million from Clark County. They gave back about $4.4 million of that. So the new austerity amount is close to $3 million. And one of the things that I didn't know would be as significant in the QBE funding formula, they actually hold back the equivalent of what you'd earn in the district for 5 mils. So they always subtract out 5 mils whenever they're doing their overall calculation for you. And basically, whenever they are refunding all the districts 60% of that austerity, that means our local 5 mil share goes up. So we don't receive this entire $4.4 million because the amount that they're withholding for that local 5 mil share also increases. So the net effect to CCSD is about $3.6 million in that amended FY21 budget.
Okay. Well, I think in terms of the legislative agenda, our main focus, and it's good that they're doing that, but in terms of our legislative agenda, what we've been saying from the very beginning, and typically we have met with our delegation of 3 representatives and 2 senators to the state legislature, to try to ask them to fight for QBE being indexed for inflation. And
excuse me.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's been one of the main complaints, and I know Mr. Pruitt can probably back me up here. Since this was initiated, is that the QBE funding formula is not indexed to some inflationary measure, and so that means it kind of stays stagnant unless they make additions, subtractions, or changes to it. And this is something that I know has been looked at. It's got to be on their radar, but it's something that we should definitely push for.
So let me just, and it doesn't necessarily change the wording that you put here, but I tell you, everybody from the bottom to the top sort of presents this in an extreme way, and it's a little more nuanced than that. It's not that we're only getting the amount that we got back in the 80s when QBE was enacted. They do adjust the basket of prices they use for the formula every few years for each item. So it's not as bad as it's often made out to be, but it is a different mechanism they use. It's not just a simple inflation adjustment that keeps us up to date all the time. It's a much laggy or more subjective adjustment.
And it's kind of a piecemeal approach too. It's like, hey, we'll look at teacher salaries and what you earn for a base teacher this year, and then they may also look at how much they are going to increase supplies for classrooms. So it's not necessarily something easy and calculatable, like Mike was saying, that's tied to an inflationary measure. It's more of a piecemeal approach, and they may change certain segments of it.
Well, from y'all's standpoint, does the rationale need to? Obviously, the numbers are different, but does the rationale need to change? I mean, I know the transportation piece, is really huge for us, and we've spent a lot of discussion on that, even with the legislators, because we've always had a PowerPoint when we met with them, and that was at least one good chart and graph.
I'd say, to be honest, in order to have an educated response to this, I would have to look at how much they had provided for supplies, how much they provided for a base level teacher, looking at over history and kind of comparing that to inflation over the same time period to see whether or not what they're providing now goes as far or not as far as it once did.
Is that an incredible amount of work? I mean, how many pieces would there be? I mean, we know we pulled out the transportation piece. So there would be the teacher salary piece, but that's always confused because not all the teachers are under the QB formula. We have a lot of staff that's not under that. And I don't think it's funny. If I'm understanding it correctly, Superintendent Woods is asking for director of nursing on the state level, but I don't think the funding is being for nursing on the school level has actually been altered. So, and I don't know exactly what that ratio is, but I know we exceed it. So do you think just, I mean, how many pieces would you see that would make it, that would kind of emphasize the rationale of what we're talking about?
I guess to me, the research would just being going in and seeing what was earned for a base level teacher, seeing what they're providing in supplies and operational expenses. As long as there is a resource for me to go and see what that has been over time, and as much as this is talked about statewide, I'm sure somebody already has that data, and we can compare it to inflation and see, where it should be if we had, if the trajectory was based off of inflation versus where it's at right now. It would just be a matter of researching that, and hopefully someone else has already done that research. If not, we would have to put it together.
Well, you got a lot on your plate, and I don't want to pile stuff on. If you could look to see if somebody's already done it,
okay,
and then you and I can talk later. If not, maybe there would be some other way to pull out maybe one piece, maybe like teacher salaries along with transportation. And
sounds like a good idea.
And so if that would be okay with you.
Be my pleasure.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. So also on here, we talked about student transportation. And then you also have on here a decrease in income taxes. And one thing that I wanted to note, this might be something we want to change or address, looking at the most recent Department of Revenue reports.
Mm-hmm.
This is December, so I know January is out there. I couldn't find it when I looked quickly. But look at the individual income tax. Just for December, it's up 7.2%.
Mm-hmm.
And year to date, it's up over 10% for individuals. So as long as we're talking about the same thing, despite there being a decrease in what is withheld in income taxes for individuals, it looks like the amount of revenue that they're raising accounts for the majority. I mean, we're looking at $611 million of the $722 million that has increased year to date from the prior fiscal year. So I'm not certain, as long as we're comparing the correct periods, that lowering the income tax rate has actually affected the bottom line.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and because I know Selena has a meeting in 10 minutes. So okay. Go ahead and do appreciate it, Byron, so much. And then I will, you and I can communicate individually and see how we can tweak the rationale.
Okay, that works.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And again, Dr. Blankenship, thank you for your welcome on board, and thanks for being here. I think the piece that we've got on the legislative agenda is promoting teacher recruitment and retention. And there is a bill that it's Senate Bill 88 that I don't know if you've been able to look at, but they're talking about. I mean, one of the things that we've been asking for is mentorship of teachers as a means of retention. because we know teachers get if they feel like they're off on their own and they're in their first few years, they tend to get, it's kind of like, I don't know if I can do this. And having been a beginning teacher, I certainly got the feeling, I can feel it. Excuse me. Come on. Sorry. Oh, God. I am not good with technology, if anybody doesn't know that by now. But one thing it says in Bill, one of the issues we've had about the mentorship of teachers, of beginning teachers, is that there's no money behind it. Now, what this bill says, and I don't know if you or Dr. Thomas would be the best way of answering this, but it says each local school system participating in a tiered evaluation system. Are we in a tiered evaluation system? Dr. Thomas is shaking her head. And
Dr.
so,
Blankenship, please correct me. I'm assuming they're talking about like tier 1, tier 2 for the number of years that teachers have worked. So like a 0 to 3, and then those who are over 3 years. Is that what they're talking about in this?
Yes, ma'am. That's what I'm assuming as well. Greg, I have not read that bill in its entirety. I have looked at the summary of it, but what a tiered evaluation system looks like typically is that you do have some individuals that are on what we might call a full cycle, or a more flexible a tier, depending on the number of years and depending on how their ratings have been over the course of time that they've been teaching. So, if they have satisfactory performance and they have more years that they have been teaching, then they are likely to be on a more flexible cycle than those that are just beginning their teaching career or moving into a different area to teach.
So what they're saying is that they're asking, or they're saying that we can do less evaluations of experienced teachers and apply those resource savings to mentoring and coaching new teachers. So they're not throwing new money at it. They're simply saying that we're going to save you money here. And I don't know if any of that's true or not. And I don't know how you, Brandon, weigh in too. I don't know if we could simply say, well, we're going to evaluate our experienced teachers less, so therefore we've got extra resources left over and extra time, so we're going to devote those to coaching new teachers.
I think that's one way to look at it, but coaching and evaluation are not synonymous. So they're saying evaluate less so you can spend more time in the novice teacher's classroom. And what we really probably need is more resources to develop mentor teachers so that they can coach and support teachers that are on their team or teachers that are in similar content. And so it's expanding, ideally, it's expanding the coaching just from the responsibility of the principal or the assistant principal, and building the capacity of other teacher leaders, including the instructional coach, to provide coaching. And that does take money.
It does take money.
Because we need to build the capacity of those individuals, because coaching is not innate. It's something that has to be developed.
That's a very good point. They're talking about mentor. They're talking about taking evaluation money, supposedly savings, and going into coaching. And that's That's like
Yeah.
going to taking your grocery money and buying hardware at Lowe's. So that's something that you know, and I will certainly love to work with whoever Dr. Thomas kind of points me into to kind of fit that into our rationale, because this is one of the ones that I would like to see if we could have some impact. Even though I know GSBA is certainly doing this as well, but I think hearing from individual school boards is not without merit. And that, and also you brought up a good point, Brandon, about actually developing mentor teachers. Because I think the assumption people have is if you've been teaching for 15 years, then you could mentor someone else who's in their first year, and that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, that's not necessarily the case.
And if I could add, Mr. Davis, we are working with UGA to, we wrote a grant to the Spitzer Foundation seeking additional funding to develop mentor teachers. I'm going to gladly hand that over to Selena and Dr. Francis as soon as they get comfortable. But I mean, I think that highlights the point that we need time and money to develop. So that's why we have sought the Spitzer grant to help us develop a curriculum for mentor teachers and then train them in that curriculum. And it's all about that grant money, because we don't currently, not that we don't currently have it, but it is something that is needed.
Agreed.
I think we had started strongly in that way with Mr. Michael Harris and his work with induction, and working with Erica Gilbertson at UGA on a strong induction program. So that had become a priority for us, but then having the funding to do that in a more intentional and intense way would be beneficial.
And then
Okay,
that helps with,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, then that helps with the retention of teachers too. You know, if you build a strong induction and mentoring program, then teachers are more competent, more confident, and more likely to stay.
Okay, I feel like I've got enough to to begin tweaking this and then giving it to Dr. Thomas and Selena and Brandon and y'all see what you think about it. If that's okay. I'm talking about the rationale. I don't see that the actual I don't think the statement itself has changed at all. I think it's it kind of covers all the areas in terms of the salaries as well as maintaining the TRS and loan forgiveness. But I think it's that last piece in terms of beginning teachers, because I do think that they think they're addressing the need, but again, without specific resources, they're actually not. So is that fair? I know, Selena, you have to go. You already gone?
I do. I'm
Okay.
sorry to.
Thank you so much, though. Thank you for coming. And Brandon, if you need to go, that's totally understandable. And because what we're doing is that we're just kind of covering different areas. There is a bill, HB 120, that deals specifically with, and I sent that out to board members, and I've contacted some legislators on the topic, but that does address the need for the DACA students to pay in-state tuition, and that's our last item on the that's number 6 on our legislative agenda. So, you know, I really hope that gets some traction. And that's actually being introduced by a Republican that's on the Education Committee for, you know, for the House. So I was pleased with that. Next, I was going to go again, not wanting to keep people on here any longer, you know, than they can afford. Karen, we're talking about the improvement of pre-K, and you know, we kind of got tired of having it there and tried to do it ourselves in terms of equalizing pay.
Yes, sir.
Where are we at with that now? Is that
so because of the board's vote in Clark County, our teachers will have equivalent pay to their K-12 counterpart, as will our pre-K assistants. But the number you have here on the paperwork for the assistant pre-K is what the grant provides for a pre-K assistant's pay. The additional pay to make it equivalent to other assistants in the district is coming from the board's budget. The same thing is true for the teacher compensation to make it equivalent to K-12 is coming out of the local budgets. And so I do think this is still something that we need to work on as a state. They did a couple of years back make an effort to increase pre-K teacher pay. It is still not equivalent to K-12. And for as long as it's not equivalent, we're going to continue to lose good, strong pre-K teachers to kindergarten and above because they can't afford not to take the difference in pay that would be increased by going into the K-12. For us, because our board has kindly voted to equilibrate those pays, I feel like that will help us sort of stem that tide where we're losing, you know, our experienced teachers to K-12. I will look again at what that number difference is because we had averaged not only salary but benefits projections into that number. I suspect it's slightly different, and it is an average. So there's a difference between, you know, how different it is in the first year of teaching than it is by the 3rd or the 5th or the 10th year of teaching. And so I'll happily look at that with our HR department to get you a more precise number.
Okay, that would be great. And in terms of when you say that we're still losing, you're talking statewide.
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yeah. And so I think it is something that still is in need across the district, and the fact that our district is able to support the difference. Imagine what we could do with those funds if the state were funding us fully through the grant.
So it's kind of like the transportation issue where we are going, and tell me if I'm wrong, Dr. Thomas, but I think in transportation too, we're going above and beyond what the state is willing to recognize as a need. And, you know, because we have so many kids that live on streets that
Right.
don't have sidewalks and they're just not safe environments to be hanging out on, even if they're closer to the schools. So this is an example of where we
do it with nursing, we do it with transportation, we do it with pre-K. I mean, really, we do it with teaching. We have many teaching positions that are not state-funded positions so that we can maintain a healthy class size for our students and our teachers. So you would basically see that supplementing kind of across the board in all areas of instruction and operations.
Yeah.
This demonstrates our valuing of the education of our students across the board.
Yes.
And of course-
I was going to mention, if I could, I heard on the WGA, I forget when it was, a few days ago, I just put the link in the chat. They interviewed Stacy Newhart Pritchett. I don't know, do you know her, Karen?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, she
Yeah.
was talking about how important it is for the pre-K teachers to be our best most senior, most wise teachers, and that the turnover of pre-K teachers is really a problem when it comes to getting kids the foundations that they need. And I guess there's a new study. I was going to look it up sometime
yeah,
this week.
and part of that is on Clark County students. That's a longitudinal study on Clark County pre-K students,
Yeah.
in addition to students in other parts of the county. And yeah, the long range effects of having had a strong pre-K program is definitely demonstrated through those longitudinal studies. Thank you for bringing that in.
She was really making the case for paying pre-K teachers more and keeping the good ones there, because the more experienced ones are doing the really good work that we need to improve achievement in the district.
Well, that equalizing locally is one of the proudest things that has been done since I've been on the board, as far as I'm concerned. I don't have any idea how much that cost us, Dr. Thomas. Do you, a ballpark figure?
The estimate was around $450,000 that was budgeted for it.
Yeah.
And then as we expand the program, we'll hire more staff, and so the cost will simply go up, but it's certainly worth it.
Investing in our young.
Now, does a pre-K teacher, how does that fit into the salary schedule that we're following for the state? I mean, I know we're supplementing, but is there any other downside that the fact that we're doing it and not the state, in terms of retirement or anything?
Oh, no, sir. It would
Okay.
be based off of their salary.
Okay.
And so we're essentially ensuring that our pre-K teachers are paid out of the equivalent as a K-12 in the exact same position with the same years and experience.
Okay. So as long as we're doing that, there's no other way that they're being penalized through the state processes of retirement or health care benefits or anything like that. Okay. Well, thank you. If you can update that number, that'd be fantastic. And,
Absolutely. I'll work with HR and get that done for you.
and again, if you need to leave, I certainly understand it. Patricia, I'm kind of going quickly here. So
No, it's fine.
So just stop me if I'm going too fast, or anybody. I'm aware that we've got a lot of staff people here, and I really don't want to take up a lot of time. I think at this point, since we're not going to be able to pass anything, it's a matter of kind of finding out who I need to talk to, or who Dr. Thomas, like on that, that teacher recruitment and retention piece, who can help me kind of reword that and put some ideas in there.
And that would be Dr. Blankenship. She could do that along with Dr. Francis, her new staff person, but I would begin with Dr. Blankenship.
Okay, great.
Greg, just a quick question. Did you share these, or is the staff, the cabinet, aware of these priorities? And have we invited them, maybe not this year, but in the future, to contribute to these priorities? Like, do they have ideas about things that we should be advocating for? I mean, some of the things Mr. Gaskin just said seem to indicate, giving them an idea of where the rubber meets the road, actually what happens when we do things, seems really relevant. I don't know if they want to add that to their list of things to do, but I mean, certainly feels like we could open the window for them to put their opinions in.
Well, what we did, and again, it can always be revisited if and I asked board members if they had any additions, that they had, but I think that if you look at the promotion, teaching, and retention, it seems to have everything in there. And certainly when I talk to Dr. Blankenship, I will ask her if there's anything we need to add, or Brandon or Mr. Gaskin's got anything to add. But I think in the rationale, what Mr. Gaskins shared with us will certainly change our rationale and make it much more distinct. Particularly in reference to how the state feels like they're addressing our need for to finance mentoring. So, but you're right. I think it could, a much better job could be done. I'm not sure that we want to add. We did when we first did this legislative agenda. We wanted to not make it endless, and so we did limit it. But certainly you're right. I mean, we always need input year to year.
And alignment to the strategic plan too would seem to be relevant.
Yeah, you're right. And of course, we've kind of tweaked the strategic plan. So you're right. We've got.
I mean, I think it's great. I mean, it's great.
Right.
I'm not criticizing. I'm just thinking
No,
about where do we go after this year if we want to try to incorporate some of these new pieces. It's just a suggestion.
Well, hopefully some of the rationale, I mean, we're going to have to tweak the rationale. Now, in terms of the fully funding public schools, there may be more nuances that like Mike was pointing to and Mr. Schumann was pointing to in terms of it's not a straightforward just cost of living like Social Security every 6 months type thing, that it is, there's more nuance to it. So, and that's always been the one that has really bugged our legislators in the past, because they say, well, the governor just gave all the teachers $3,000 and now you're complaining you don't have enough money. I mean, what's the deal here? So Frank Ginn is that's the one that he's very partial towards criticizing us about. So perhaps we could make it a little bit more distinct instead of just formula, for doing the formula based on the rate of inflation since '86. You want to say anything more about that, Patricia, or just anybody have any suggestions or along those lines?
I mean, I do, Mr. Davis, I do agree with Dr. Yeager that there may be some opportunities for, as we develop the legislative agenda for 2021, to look at some of the legislation that's being introduced this year. I think I got a communication today that the legislation that was looking to pull some of the funding from charter systems and pushing them into charter schools is going to be revisited, but revamped to not do that, but that they would revisit that bill in 2023 potentially. And so I think there are a couple of bills that do impact us as a charter system, as a public school district, that maybe some of my colleagues on cabinet may be aware of, that we just want to keep under our radar. So that way the board and the Government Relations Committee could support us under the Golden Dome as we try to advocate for legislation that helps us in our work. So I don't know what that opportunity may be, but it does sound like that may be a good strategy to align it with the strategic plan and like run it past cabinet to see what legislation we could be looking at.
Is that something that obviously you would be our spearhead on that one? Because you're in the cabinet. So, and you just mentioned one that I really wasn't aware of. So I need to, has Scott written about that? Because I tried to go through all his emails and I did not see about the changing in the charter school formula of any sort.
Yeah, I can email you information. We actually, Dr. Thomas signed on with the letter with the other 46 of the 48 charter systems. And so we advocated through our Charter System Foundation to make sure that they advocated under the Golden Dome for that not to happen. So there are a couple of senators who are kind of on the side of the charter systems in Georgia. And the information just was released today to us that they were able to, or they're in the process of rewriting the bill to make sure that those funds are not withheld from charter systems. So I'll forward you the information.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, and I'm so glad that we were able to react to that on the superintendent level. That's fantastic. Yeah, but I right now I'm having a hard time understanding the what it all means. So I talk to you later and read what you send me so I can understand it better. So what did they want to do? Lawrence?
What did they?
I mean, originally, there was a proposed bill to do what?
There was a proposed bill in SB 59 in section 1 to reduce charter system funding by 3%, which is a 20.7% reduction. And those funds would be reallotted. My understanding of the bill is reallotted to charter schools. And so we, in addition to 47 other charter systems in Georgia by superintendent, signed to say we would not support that. We would rather the funds, of course, come to us and, not our funding be reduced by 3% or reduced to 3%. So,
Mr. Harris, just to clarify, so when he's saying to charter schools, Mr. Davis, looking at really those private charters that are not charters that are part of local boards or local school systems, but that instead of having those funds come to us, they would really support more of the privatized charter movement. So isn't that accurate, Mr. Harris?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Is that I mean, I think is that $1 million roughly that we get every year? Is that the funding we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And that we generally, okay. So they wanted to take money out of that and give it. Okay. I got you. Yeah, no, I think that would be an idea that we could add somehow in this legislative agenda. So that's a good example. And then if you can, by talking to cabinet or whatever, have others, certainly we need to bring it before the board. There is SB 47, which is Scott's been writing a good bit about, which is to me very kind of an ongoing attempt, and that's the one that is attempting to in the special education private grant money that the state allots. They want to include 504s, and I don't see any money attached to it, but if they get this through there, I'm sure that there will be a lot of speculation about how much money they will need to do it. Has anyone else, is that something, Lawrence, that you've been following, or Dr. Thomas or Mr. Gaskins?
Which bill was it, Mr. Davis?
It's SB 47, and what it does is let me see. I can give you a synopsis of it. It expands the special needs scholarship to include students with a 504 plan and a specific diagnosis of one of the listed conditions. It also expands the program to include students who receive preschool special education services under IDEA. So this is money that can be used, that the parent can they open up the date, parents put in for it, and and then it's used, and then there is a cap on it, but it's there until it's gone. And parents of special needs children are the ones who would apply for these grants, and they could then take that money and use it for tuition to private schools.
Mm.
What SB 88 does is it not only covers students that have an IEP, but also a 504. And then they have a long list of what they call 504, including ADHD and emotional and behavior disorder. So you could drive a truck through it.
So that one's a little bit different than House Bill 60 that you were mentioning before. I think we emailed about.
I don't think I emailed about that, even that topic, did I? The only one I remember doing is the one dealing with my DACA. I don't think I emailed about this one.
This sounds like a little bit different. So this one is, I had sent you a message about House Bill 60. That's the one that I think went before the House, or supposed to go this week or last, which was providing vouchers for students in school districts that did not offer 100% face-to-face instruction. And so
Yeah, this is different.
This is different than that.
Right.
Bill.
Right.
This is for students with special needs, and then House Bill 60 is for all students, but only for districts that did not do 100% face-to-face.
And actually, HB went off my radar, and so I will bring it back to my radar. Okay. I had when did you email me that last week?
Maybe it may have been last week or the week before last. My weeks run together. But I think House Bill 60, House Bill 142, and Senate Bill 47 will be the three that are all kind of tied towards vouchers in some form in charter schools.
What was the third one? Because I had 47, 60, and what was the third one?
It was Senate Bill 47, House Bill 60, and House Bill 142. Those were the three I remember reading about that were the three kind of tax credits, charter school, voucher programs that are being brought to the Senate floor or House floor.
And so in terms of our legislative agenda, I mean, right now, I think it's still capped at $100 million just for the voucher program, excluding the special education piece. That's a separate one. And now apparently they've added a third one under House Bill 60, and that's if it's dealing with virtual school versus brick and mortar, and picking off students in that way as well. So it would seem like, along the lines of what you were saying, Patricia, earlier, that we really need to, because they're coming at the funding of private schools in a number of different directions. And so I think we need to look at how we word that. And it needs to be generic, but at the same time, it needs to recognize that there are a number of different ways that they're attempting.
That's been a topic of discussion at our RESA, the 13 area superintendents meetings as well, is that we just need to be very aware and cognizant of future legislation that is seeking to reroute funds away from public schools to private schools, but that's being done in a number of ways that, we just have to stay alert and conscious of the legislation that's out there.
Yeah. And then the only other legislative piece that we haven't talked about that was there before was talking about on the college level and the HOPE grant. And so I was going to try to reach out to Athens Tech and make sure that those numbers are, because as far as I know, I mean, the Hope Grant still doesn't pay for the entire. Do anyone know offhand, Lawrence, have you dealt with that at all in terms of what the shortage is on the Hope Grant for kids that opt to go to Athens Tech?
I do not recall those numbers off the top of my head. I can look into it though.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm open for further discussion if anyone has it. Like I said, I was kind of apologetic, earlier, Dr. Thomas, about throwing this out there so late, and I fault myself for that in terms of your cabinet. And I know y'all were meeting late last night, and
yeah, I'm apologizing. I didn't get off my last meeting until about 7:15, and I went from that straight into school closures and did that until about 10 and did not send that to the team until this morning, but everyone was accommodating and just made it work around their schedule.
Well, I don't want this to drag out your day any more than.
Oh, you're fine. I'm fine. No problem.
So is there some confusion about who else is on this committee? Do we need to reinforce that, or we just need to get the new committee policy done, which I'm working on?
I don't know. The only people that signed up for it, and maybe this is a confusion. I know that Nicole and Karina are both on it. And I made a mistake by saying Dr. Anderson earlier.
Oh, okay. Yep. Because I had Karina's number. I could have reached out to her.
Yeah, and I'm very sorry about that. But the confusion is, I'm not the confusion, but only 2 people signed up for it in terms of our committee slots for this coming year. So I don't know if Attorney Hall thought that wasn't necessary, and I did not, and I should have reached out to Karina myself, and I'm sorry, and I have her number too. And I all of a sudden it hit me. I knew there were the 2 new board members were on this committee, but I remember now that she took Antoine Stevens's place. So anyway, Mike, what can we do to, from a parliamentary standpoint, if based on what we've done today, if we come up with a draft that we bring to the work session and is approved as to be part of the agenda for the regular meeting, would that mean that we could pass it at our regular meeting in March?
Yeah, there's no requirement that committees approve things other than on the policy committee before they come to the full board. Okay. All the others are just advisory committees. So that's fine. When you get to that part at the work session on your committee report, you can just describe this discussion and let them know we didn't have a quorum, so we couldn't vote, but this is the consensus.
Okay. And I'll reach out to Karina and Attorney Hall to make sure that they're consulted on this. I'll be honest with you. My focus legislatively has been on the voting stuff. I mean, which doesn't really relate to anything that we're doing on the school board. But I'm beginning of last week, the Senate released like 15 bills on dealing with curtailing absentee voting and putting having to put your driver's license, a picture of your driver's license in the application for an absentee ballot, And then when you turn in the absentee ballot, you do that as well. There was also, there's talk about eliminating the drop boxes, which, you know, is you can imagine Fulton County, if you got one place to put your drop box, you know, to put your absentee ballot in, and those are just some of them, you know, curtailing early voting. So there's just a whole slew of folks who, or bills that are being introduced, particularly in the Senate right now, to alter the way that voting has been done. And then on the House, the House created a special committee and they haven't come out with their report yet, but they have a special committee that they put together on, they call it voter integrity. And I'm sure some of the same legislation will be proposed there as well. So that's really been my focus more than this. It shouldn't be, I guess, but I'm just concerned that we're discouraging people to vote. So, but anyway, if anyone doesn't have anything else to do, I won't hang, you know, I'm done. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.